Tēnā koutou, kia koutou te mana whenua te arawa iwi. Mai makatu te tongarero tēnā koutou. Ki ngā mate huhuia o te wā, haere, haere, haere atu rā. Hoki mai kia tātou te konehi ora e tēnei, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Tēnā koutou e ranga e te kaupapa o te rā, noi reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Well, it's great to get here. And it's great to be back here again. I think this is the third of these conferences. We were just trying to count up over there, and it's so wonderful to see so many people here. And it's great to be here with some of our ministerial housing team. Of course, the Honourable Willie Jackson, the Associate Housing Minister and Minister in charge of Māori Development, and the Honourable Marama Davidson, who looks after the area of homelessness, and local Member of Parliament, based here in Rotorua, Tamati Coffey, and National Party spokesperson, Tama. I think this will be your first of these conferences here in your new role. I'd like to acknowledge that. But lastly, thanks to all the many housing providers represented here today, including iwi, our Māori community housing providers, local government and ministry officials. And I do want to take a moment often we just say that thing, ministry officials, and leave it at that, but want to acknowledge the wonderful men and women who sit within our housing teams in government, who have been working so hard to bring our vision as a government to life. So we have here today, we have Andrew Crisp, the Chief Executive of the Ministry of Housing Development, Urban Development, and his team, and I'd like to acknowledge the huge amount of work that they've put into the Maiki strategy, but most importantly, the relationships that I know that they've formed. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about what you are doing to support Māori housing opportunities. It's your commitment which will help us to achieve this better future and to flip what the statistics tell us. It's our job as government to work with Māori to support and enable better housing in genuine, active partnership so that all whānau have safe, healthy, affordable homes with secure tenure. I guess this is just another way of saying give us the cash and we'll get on and do it. But it is those active partnerships that are absolutely critical to us. When we talk about housing, the housing crisis that we're currently facing, being decades in the making, you will know that this is even more so for Māori, who have been separated from their land, their communities and their way of life in the 19th century and further marginalised through the individualisation and alienation of whenua Māori starting in the late 19th century, continuing through to the 20th and the 21st centuries, with policies that have not looked to by Māori for Māori solutions to a crisis that for Māori stretches the whole housing continuum, from homelessness to low rates of home ownership. We are under no illusions. There is no single quick or easy fix to this. Rather, what is required is a series of actions with interconnected policy and, importantly, funding that combines a responsive resource management system with more direct housing policies and solutions, including policies that are effectively targeted to the needs and aspiration of Māori. And this is why we have Māori-led housing projects using a by Māori for Māori approach under the Maihi Framework for Action, which puts whānau at the centre. As I said earlier, this is what active and meaningful partnerships look like. If we are going to solve the housing crisis for Māori, our government recognises it is critical. In fact, it is the only way that we work together. Our Labour government will not resile from this, despite the concerning race-baiting rhetoric that we are increasingly hearing from the opposition benches when it comes to notions of partnership and working together. We know in the area of housing that we cannot step away from this. With our recent unprecedented $730 million investment in housing and infrastructure for Māori housing through Whai Kāinga Whai Oranga, we are putting our money where our mouth is, with Māori in the driving seat. And I'm absolutely delighted to say that part of that $730 million, which is the largest ever investment in Māori housing that we've seen in this country, that included a commitment to build 1,000 houses, and I'm delighted to say that we're just about to hit the target of that over 1,000 houses being contracted. And we could not have done that without the partnerships and relations we had. So thank you, and I think everyone should give themselves a round of applause for that. We're also investing in good job opportunities through our trade training, apprenticeships and school partnerships. One of the success stories is right here at Rotorua Boys High Academy. Last year, out of the 18 boys in the program, 12 are now in apprenticeships. These are homes that have been built locally, and they are being used for housing locally. Elsewhere in the Bay of Plenty, Kāinga Ora has academies at Western Heights High School and Opotiki College. The mahi done through Opotiki College is part of the tripartite agreement with Te Whakatohea to deliver local house builds utilising local people, including young rangatahi in their final school year. In the past 4 years, hundreds of young people have been through our Trades Academy and moved into apprenticeships. I call this a success story. Through Kāinga Ora, the government is also partnering with Māori businesses in a similar vein. And I'd also like to acknowledge Andrew McKenzie, the Chief Executive Officer of Kāinga Ora, who is here today. Kāinga Ora often gets a pretty hard time from the opposition benches. It's daring to do something, and it's called building state houses in New Zealand again. And that's something that I celebrate, and something that our government is absolutely proud that we have delivered more state houses than any government in generations. We are building more state houses than any government since Norm Kirk, and that is something that we are rightfully proud of. Some of the examples of the partnering with Māori businesses include examples such as Iconic, a regional build partner in Gisborne, who is building relocatable homes for the East Coast with a goal of creating 45 new Māori apprentices. And Naifare Tipu Limited in Hawke's Bay, who's building Futures Trade Training Pathway for 17 to 26-year-olds, with more than 70 students passing through the program last year. And yet another example of the work underway with iwi is what Kāinga Ora have been doing with a group of Tainui-affiliated trades organisations, guiding them to become a construction partner, now registered as Tainui Trades Collective. This brings joy to my heart. As I think I've explained at this conference before, the doctor part of my name is not a scientist, as many people assumed when I was the Minister of Research, Science and Innovation. But my PhD is in New Zealand history. And my PhD looked at the Māori Trades Training Scheme in the years during and after the Second World War. And what I saw there was a government led by a remarkable individual, a man called Peter Fraser, who saw that we had a housing crisis in New Zealand, but he also saw that we had another crisis in New Zealand, and that was the underemployment of young Māori, and set up and invested in trades training to make sure that there were futures for these young people. I had the absolute privilege of interviewing a number of those trades trainees who'd come down to Christchurch for what they thought was a year or so in the 1950s and 60s, and was still living there. And what a huge impact that initiative had had on their lives. So every time I see our opportunity for our government to be actively involved in trades training, it's something that I'm always very vocal about. If we look around, all around the motu, we can see diggers. You'll know how how we are also heavily investing in infrastructure to get land build ready so we can ramp up the housing supply. We're making good progress, including here in Rotorua, which I'll come back to shortly. But we have to do this together, and thank you for your part in this team effort. However, I do know that we are living in challenging times with things like the rising cost of living and the impacts of climate change, as seen during Cyclone Gabriel, hitting regions that were already hit hard by our housing crisis. Te Tai Taukarau, Tamaki, Te Rairawhiti and Tukitemu. It's been amazing but not surprising to see iwi and hapu coming together to respond, with marae bursting open their doors to help. But this isn't something that should be taken for granted. As a nation, we must be more prepared as severe weather events become more and more frequent. If I look to the response to the cyclone and the flooding, we can see the benefit of these relationships and these partnerships that have been building over the last 5 years. Already in Tairawhiti, through Whaikainga Whairanga, partnerships with Toitu Tairawhiti, our focus has adapted to include a necessary pivot to temporary accommodation to whānau in need right now. And this is alongside the significant build program that is already underway. That's also why this government is working on ways we can minimise damage from the future impacts of climate change, including increasing the resilience of our homes, buildings and places, and reducing our carbon footprint while also keeping the lid on spending. This is in addition to the immediate work to get people and whānau out of civil defence shelters and working with the Minister for Cyclone Recovery to integrate the housing rebuild into the government's broader recovery plan through our temporary accommodation service. Our relationships with Māori and iwi will be critical to this. When we talk about active partnerships and getting the job done, our work with iwi and Māori right here in Rotorua is something worth shouting about. It is having real impacts. Last December, in response to a housing crisis that was decades in the making, with new housing supply not keeping up with population growth, we established the Rotorua Housing Accord, an agreement between Government, Rotorua Lakes Council and Te Arawa Iwi, including Ngāti Whakaiwai, to work together to build a better housing and urban future for Rotorua using everybody's collective insights, strengths and experience. So how are we doing? Development has been sped up with a huge uptake in new dwelling consents. We've been making significant investments in infrastructure, including $55 million to enable residential developments and $84.6 million for stormwater improvements. We've modernised planning rules to make it easier to move to higher density housing, including in Papakāinga. We have around 300 public homes under construction or planned for delivery by the end of 2024. And this is significant. In the previous decade, under the previous government, Rotorua had seen a net loss of 42 houses in Rotorua. And then people asked why we had people living in motels. Our government won't be reducing the number of public houses that we have in this location. We are adding to it. And I'm proud of each and every house that we see that has a whānau that has moved into it and is making their life there. Additionally, through Whaikainga Whairanga, we have invested $19.8 million in Ngāti Whakaiwai Tribal Lands Manawa Gardens development to enable over 100 homes, including 20 affordable rentals. There's $12.5 million in Ōwhata 2B to support the development of 93 homes on Tūturi Whenua Māori. And there's $4.2 million through a Maihi Partnership grant to support the delivery of 17 public homes with Ngāti Uwenuku Kōpāko in partnership with Habitat for Humanity. We are already seeing significant progress towards reducing resilience reliance on motels and emergency housing, with the number of motels used, the number of people in motels, and the number of people waiting for a public home decreasing over the last year. But we still have a way to go. But with our enduring Rotorua Housing Accord partnership and progress on a pipeline of new housing, including Māori housing projects, we are well on the way. We are starting to see those hopeful green shoots of change. We are also partnering with iwi and Māori through the Land for Housing program to support housing supply at scale, predominantly through commercial partnerships. In total, our Land for Housing program has acquired more than 315 hectares of land that will result in an estimated 9,891 more homes, and about 25% of these will be sold at affordable prices for first home buyers or made available for public housing. So there's a lot of information there, but to wrap it up, thanks to this sustained effort combining national system-wide changes and local level partnerships, we are seeing those green shoots. And of course, events like this National Māori Housing Conference helps connect people and organisations across Aotearoa to drive further change. I'm honoured to be part of this kaupapa. Our commitment to working with you or getting the job done is stronger than ever. Let's continue to do this together. Thank you.